My name is Ikuya Takahashi. I'm Japanese, yeah. And then I am the founder of so-called ika project, okay? I started this online project about 1 year ago, and where I teach various classes, including this Japanese literature discussion class. This is the signature class, okay? So I've been teaching Japanese literature for 1 year. And then this is called ika. My project is, yeah. And then I'd like to introduce my classes, okay? So this is open to anybody who is interested in Japanese culture or literature. For example, some of you who have never read Japanese literature, you are more than welcome to participate in my classes, yeah? And so that you can discover Japanese literature with me and with the other participants as well. And these classes I conduct are conducted entirely in English, right? So you don't have to have prior knowledge of Japanese. If you have Japanese knowledge, that would be fantastic, but you don't need that to participate in my classes, yeah? And also, this is not a really casual book club kind of thing, but at the same time, this is NOA, the university lecture kind of classes you'd find at the, for example, literature department, yeah? Rather, this is like in between, okay? Some kind of elements is lecture style at the same time. Main point of these classes is that sharing your opinions about the works or about the specific parts in the story, and then we can just exchange our ideas very freely so that we can be exposed to other opinions, other perspectives. For example, myself, I'm teaching Japanese literature, but at the same time, I'm learning a lot from the participants, and because so many interesting perspectives from a different background, different cultures, right? So this is what makes my classes unique, okay? And then so far, literally, people from all over the world have participated in my classes, okay? So far, people with 20 nationalities have come to my classes. They include book lovers, Japan lovers, writers, and teachers. You don't have to be one of them, but anyway, anybody is welcome if you're interested in Japanese culture or literature. Let's discover together, okay? All right. I have been using one book specifically. This is the best book ever, okay? The Oxford book. If you haven't heard of this book, this one is the ideal book for your introduction to Japanese literature. There are 36 writers, and all of them are 36 short stories, okay? None of them is long stories, so it's easier for you to access these stories, I think. And all of the writers in this book, 36 writers, are very famous writers, okay? Including Kawabata and Oe, okay? And actually, I have been teaching this class for 1 year, right? So from next term on, I am thinking of using another book, which is fantastic as well. This one, have you seen this book? Penguin book, okay? This is edited by J. Rubin. If you are a Murakami fan, are there any Murakami freak here? Yeah, including me. Okay, so if you are a Murakami fan, maybe you've heard of his name. J. Rubin is a very famous translator, American translator. He used to teach at Harvard. He is a translator for this. He is an editor for this book, okay? So this is very good book. So if time allows, I'm going to introduce very briefly my classes in details later at the end of the session, okay? And then today I'm going to focus on two writers, two Nobel laureates. I have a pop quiz here, okay? So how many people, how many writers, Japanese writers, have received Nobel Prizes in literature in the history? 3, 4, 5? Only 2, okay? So only Kawabata and Oe. Maybe, I hope Murakami is going to win the Nobel Prize sometime soon. I hope, fingers crossed. But so far, only 2 writers. That means you are going to be exposed to only, exclusively to these 2 Nobel laureates today. So it's a really bonus point for you. I hope, yeah. All right. So another pop quiz for you, okay? So Kawabata received the Nobel Prize in Literature in 1968 here, okay? And then Oe received the prize in 1994, for example. Please look at these 2 pictures first, okay? What are the differences? What are the notable differences? The hairstyle, correct. Glasses, correct. Oe has very unique glasses. I really like them, right? Look at these glasses. It's fantastic, right? But anyway, that is not important at all. But look at the clothes they are wearing, okay? Kawabata is wearing Japanese traditional costume called kimono, right? And Oe is wearing like tuxedo, right? Western style. Maybe it depends on the personal preferences. Maybe Owe prefers Western style clothes, but I'm reading a little bit differently from these differences of clothes, okay? So let me come back to these two pictures, okay, at the very end of my session, okay, so that I can express my opinions about the differences of these clothes, okay? So please look forward to that at the very end of the session, okay? All right, from now on, let me explain the writer's life, okay, biography. First, Kawabata, okay? He was born in 1899 and he died in 1972, like this, okay? And then look at his picture here, okay? This is, he's sitting in front of a house in Kamakura, I think. He really loved Kamakura. Kamakura is famous city for lots of Buddhist temples. And then he really was into the Zen Buddhism, right? And then anyway, so he's sitting in front of his house in Kamakura. It's only 1 hour, Kamakura city is from Tokyo, yes. And actually, he was born not in Tokyo, but he was born in Osaka, in the western part of Japan, in 1899, into a very well-established family, doctor's family. Actually, his father was a doctor, okay? But I really have to mention this one because this is very important information for his life, okay? His father was doctor, but unfortunately, when he was only 2 years old, he died. The father died because of tuberculosis. And subsequently, the mother also died by the age of Kawabata's 4 years old, okay? So, and then after that, he has one elder sister. Sister also died when she was 11 years old. And when, by the time Kawabata became 15 years old, he lost both his grandparents, okay? So literally, he became an orphan, okay? This is, I think, important information for you to know. Yes. And then, of course, Kawabata is a smart kid, okay? Because of course, he received Nobel Prize, right? So he entered the first high school in Tokyo. Let me explain the education system bit, okay? So because nowadays, of course, almost all the people go to high school, right? But in those days, the situation was a bit different, okay? How many percentage of the total population in those days in Japan could afford to go to high school? Can you guess? Actually, only 1%, okay? So that means they were the elite of the elite, okay? So only 1% went to the high school, okay? And especially this first high school is very renowned high school, and this is now Tokyo University, okay? The first 2 years, they can learn subjects at this first high school, like liberal arts university, including French and German, very elite, right? And then if you can go to this first high school, you can automatically go to Tokyo Imperial University. So in those days, it was really competitive for students to get in this high school rather than Tokyo University, okay? Once you get in this high school, you can automatically go to Tokyo University, the best university still now in Japan, okay? And he majored in Japanese literature at Tokyo Imperial University. Who else? Who writers? There are other writers who went to this same trajectory. Can you guess? Are you a fan of big Japanese literature? For example, Tanizaki, yeah, Junichiro Tanizaki and Akutagawa, Yunosuke Akutagawa, and also Atsushi Nakajima went to the first high school and Tokyo Imperial University. Same course, same trajectory, okay, for your information. And this another information is this one is also very important information. He worked as a reporter for Mainichi Shimbun. Okay, so he was in a way a journalist as well. Okay, Mainichi Shimbun, for your information, is one of the major newspaper companies. Okay, another big writer in Japanese literature worked for a newspaper company. Who is it? Natsume Soseki, for example, worked for Asahi Shimbun, another major news company. So in that sense, they are a little bit similar, right, in terms of career. And next information is can be a bit important because he studied the new literary journal, okay, new literary movement with his friend, very close friend called Yokomitsu in 1924. I'm going to touch upon this movement, literary movement, sometime soon, okay? And next one, to prove that he was a big shot in the literary world, okay? He assumed the office of the President of Japan pen Have you ever heard of this acronym? PEN. P stands for poet, E stands for essayist, N stands for novelist, okay? So related to writing profession. This studied in London, okay? And they have Japan office, Japan branch, right? So he was the president for over 15 years. So he's a big shot, right? And also, of course, he received Nobel Prize in Literature in 1968, okay? He was the first Japanese, okay, Nobel laureate. In Asia, Tagore received first, right? And then Kawabata is the second writer who receives Nobel Prize in Literature in Asia. Lastly, some other writers, also very famous writer like Dazai, committed suicide, but Kawabata as well. Kawabata committed suicide in 1972, okay? So it's rather nonsense for me to talk about the causes of someone committing suicide. I'm sure it's really complex, right? There are lots of roots under the earth. Which can be really difficult to understand. But at least I can say two things. First of all, he was really detesting his body weakening gradually, right? Like Ernest Hemingway did commit suicide. And also, I did have to share with you this information. Mishima, okay, another very famous writer, committed suicide in 1970, okay, 2 years before Kawabata committed suicide, okay. So actually, 2020, last year was the 50th anniversary year after Mishima committed suicide. So there are lots of, fairs of Mishima at the bookstore in Tokyo, right, in Japan, all over Japan. Anyway, Mishima and Kawabata had a very special relationship. Okay, in that Mishima was the disciple, and then Kawabata was the master-disciple relationship. Of course, Kawabata is senior to Mishima. Kawabata is much older than Mishima is. But anyway, Mishima respected Kawabata so much that he wrote some letters to Nobel Prize committees to express how wonderful Kawabata literature is. So maybe we can attribute the letters to the fact that Kawabata received Nobel Prize even, right? It's partly because of Mishima as well, okay? All right. Today, time is very limited, so I cannot really cover all of his works, but very representative works. I chose 6 works of Kawabata, okay? First of all, the Is Dancer. Is Dancer is one of the first work of his. It's a really great story. By the way, it happens to be in this book, okay? So in 1926, he wrote, okay? And then it seems like this is a love story, right? Is Dancer, maybe young guy falls in love with this young girl, dancer, maybe? It's correct. But at the same time, it's rather unique love story, okay? Because there are other hidden themes as well. As I said, high school student in those days was elite student, right? So the protagonist is a high school student, and the troupe of dancers belong to a very low rank of class. So he deals with class theme in this story. And also, this story takes place in Izu, in Shizuoka. You can see lots of mountains, yeah, very beautiful prefecture. So, or you can enjoy the quintessential elements of Kawabata, nature element in this story. And of course, emptiness. Okay, Kawabata's literature is sometimes called the literature of emptiness, right? So you can enjoy that as well. I highly recommend this story. It's not that long, but it's really quintessential Kawabata story, right? And next story is Snow Country. As I said, he studied New Movement, literary journal with his friend and everything, right? So for him, art for art's sake movement is really important. So some people really think that this Snow Country is the summit, okay, it's the top of this movement, okay? So some people say this is the most representative, this is the best work of his. This is translated, by the way, by Silence Taker, very famous translator, American translator, for your information. And another advantage of reading Kawabata is you can be exposed to so many Japanese traditional cultures, including tea ceremony, okay? So if you really would like to know about tea ceremony, I would highly recommend this Salon Cleanse, beautifully crafted, okay? And then tea ceremony, what kind of image do you have towards tea ceremony? Beautiful? Gorgeous, yeah, flower arrangement and tea ceremony, yeah. But at the same time, tea is closely related to Zen, okay, Zen Buddhism, okay. So maybe after reading this story, you can have a different image of tea ceremony, yeah. And the next one, the sound of the mountain, okay. So for him, nature is really important, as you can see in the title as well, right? And then this is kind of a watershed work for his life. Because look at the year when this was written in 1954. It is said that he started writing this story when he was 50 years old, right? So he really reflected on his earlier life, okay, writing this story. Lots of people, close friends of his, died during World War II, okay, and also before they became 50, lots of close friends of his died, okay. So the themes in this story are death and war, okay. Some people say this is the best work of literature after World War II, okay. You could read this one as well. And then next story, The House of the Sleeping Beauties in 1961 is rather famous internationally, right? So if you really like Tanizaki, this can be a good story for you. The theme is eroticism, okay? So the protagonist is an old guy, okay? Being fully aware of his impotence, he really can stay overnight with a young girl, and he observes the body of the naked young girl and everything. It's too intense, yeah. But anyway, if you like that kind of thing, you could get a copy of this story. It's really beautiful anyway, yeah. Okay, so House of the Sleeping Beauties. Lastly, if you really would like to know Kyoto, okay? Have you ever been to Kyoto? It's beautiful, right? I went there actually October last year. It was really stunningly beautiful, yeah. And then if you really would like to know what the tradition is like in Kyoto, the old capital, I strongly recommend this one, okay? So through this story, you can be exposed to lots of traditional activities related to Kyoto. It's beautiful. Okay, so 6 works is enough, I think. Is Dancer, Snow Country, the old capital? I would personally recommend, yeah, if you haven't read any story of his yet. Okay, next one. From now on, I'm going to talk about the life of Oe, okay? Okay, look at this picture. I really like his glasses, okay. Okay, Kenzaburo Oe was born in 1935 and he is still alive, which means he is now 85. Wow. Okay, 85 years old. Actually, so let me share with you some personal stories about Oe, okay? So I was in different phases, okay, in my life, okay? I was once in Dazai Osamu's phase, I was once in Murakami Haruki's phase, I was once in Oe's phase, when I was 20 years old, okay? And then when I was 20, I was working at the Kinokuniya bookstore. If you're a fan of Japan, maybe you may have heard of that bookstore. It's a representative bookstore in Shinjuku. Sometimes people just meet up there. Let's meet up in front of Kinokuniya today, okay? For having a coffee, yeah? I used to work there for 1 year, okay? It's very gloomy days, but anyway. And then when I was working at a cashier, I was in a phase of Oe, right? I was reading all of his works, right? And then suddenly Oe appeared. And then I was talking with my colleagues, oh, Oe is coming. Oh, whose cashier is he choosing? And then he came to my cashier. And then I still remember, he bought 5 books, right? And I really didn't know what to do, right? And then he ignored me completely. He grabbed the books and he went away, yeah? Anyway, it's a really great story. And also I participated in one of his lectures as well. He really talked about the definition of emanation. It strikes me as he's being a scholar. He's really precise in the definition of words. Anyway, I'm a huge fan. I was a huge fan of Oe. I am still a huge fan of Oe. Okay. Anyway, okay, too much for personal story. Yes. All right, going back to the main plot of today's session. Okay. So he was born in Ehime Prefecture. Okay, Shikoku. So Shikoku Island is a really countryside. Please do remember that he was born in the environment of abundant nature, okay? Lots of mountains and rivers and everything. And then when he was at high school, he met, this one is a key friend of his, Juzo Itami. Most of you have never heard of his name, but Juzo Itami is a movie director, okay? His father is also a famous movie director, but anyway, he is a really city boy. He was really knowledgeable about literature, about movies, about arts and everything, yeah? And then he met Juzo Itami when he was at high school. And then serendipitous encounter Oe did, through Juzo Itami. Oe was introduced a very famous scholar at Tokyo University, whose major is French literature, called Kazuo Watanabe, okay? And then Oe read his works and he was shocked. he was moved by his works, by the Professor Watanabe, and he decided to study at Tokyo University, best university in Japan. I will definitely go to Tokyo, and I will definitely study at Tokyo University under the direction of Watanabe only. Okay, so in his Nobel speech as well, this Watanabe appears as a name. Okay, so he really respects him even still now. Okay. Anyway, he majored in French literature at Tokyo University. In those days, lots of smart people choose French literature, okay? So French literature for smart people. Who else went to this same course, French literature at Tokyo University? Can you guess? Japanese writer? Dazai, okay? No longer human and setting sun, okay? Dazai is a senpai, senior to Oe in that sense. Anyway, he went to French literature of Tokyo University. And he was from the start going to be a writer. He is an inborn writer. And then he began publishing stories while a college student and got the Akutaga Prize, surprisingly, okay, when he was only 23 for his work called I'm going to show you soon, but Prize Stock, okay. There were lots of aspiring artists of his age, okay, and then they wanted to be a writer, but it is said after reading the Prize Stock, they gave up becoming a writer. Because Oe is so talented, okay? That made them give up their career of writing, which is fantastic, right? Anyway, I'm going to show you one paragraph of Prize Talk soon, okay? Anyway, he got the Akutaga Prize. Akutaga Prize, by the way, is the most prestigious literary award in Japan. It's like a Goncourt equivalent of Goncourt in Paris, in France, and the National Book Awards in America, and the Booker Prize in the UK, okay? You can have the general image. Okay, and in his personal life, he married Yukari, okay? As I said, Juzo Itami is a key player in his life. And then actually, Yukari is the sister of Juzo Itami, okay? So Juzo Itami not only introduced fantastic scholar, but also at the same time, he introduced his sister, okay? Who was going to be his wife, okay? So when he was 25, he married Yukari, the sister of Juzo Itami, okay? And next point is to prove that he's a really big shot, not only as a writer, but also as a politically, he's really politically famous writer as well. So the same year, he met Mao Zedong in China and Jean-Paul Sartre in Paris, okay? With another writer, Akutaga Prize winner, Kaiko Ken, he visited Paris and to have interview with Jean-Paul Sartre. Because for Oe, but for other writers as well in those days, these existentialist writers like Sartre or Camus were very impactful to them. And then Jean-Paul Sartre himself was his thesis for his undergraduate, right? So Oe was quite influenced by these writers, especially Sartre, okay? So anyway, he met Mao Zedong and Sartre. And then also, so just another information, but he's still politically really famous. He's really participating in lots of movements, anti-nuclear, for example, and then to protect the Article 9 Pacific Constitution, okay? He's rather famous politically rather than literally, right? Even now. And then I really have to include next information, okay? His first son called Hikari was born in 1963, but Hikari means light, okay? His first son. However, Hikari had a brain damage, innate brain damage, okay? So mentally challenged. After 1963, his writing style drastically changed because of the fact that his first son was born with that brain damage. I'm going to touch upon that soon. And in 1994, he won the Nobel Prize in Literature and was named to receive Order of Culture, but refused the latter. So maybe for your information, as I said, Akutaga Prize is the most prestigious literary award. Above that, there's a order called Order of Culture. This is really special award because this is given by the emperor. But he refused this prize, which was going to be given by the emperor, okay? That really caused some kind of lots of criticism among some people. But anyway, let me explain why he refused that, okay? Partly because look at the year when he was born. He was born in 1933, okay? And the World War ended in 1945, okay? And until the year 1945, the best thing to do was to die for the emperor, okay? So dying for the emperor. But America came. We lost the war and America came, and then the values was subverted 180%, 180 degrees. Okay. And then now every person's life is important, like democracy came. And then Oe actually grew up in this environment of democracy, okay? So in democracy, each person is supposed to be equal, right? So we don't believe in the higher power beyond each human being. So I think it's partly because of that, he refused this order of culture. Anyway, people in his generation have really complex feelings towards the emperor, okay? I think it's good to know. It's good for you to know, yeah. All right, and then lastly, okay, Oe Kenzaburo created Kenzaburo Oe Prize, okay, in 2006, okay? And then as for Akutagawa Prize, there are lots of committee members, right? Several of them choose one specific work, right, and writer. But when it comes to Kenzaburo Oe Prize, how many committee members are there, do you think? Only one, okay? Oe himself only, okay? So he chose so far more than 10 writers, which is an honor, right? Oe chose, okay? So anyway, so since 2006, he has his own prize as well. Okay, from now on, I'm going to introduce some of his works, okay? Okay, Oe is really prolific writer, so I really cannot cover all of his works, of course, but let me focus maybe 6 here. Okay, 6. All right, and then first of all, as I explained, prize stock, okay? This one got the Akutagawa Prize, okay? So the black soldier happens to land in the countryside, okay? And then the theme is occupation of Japan. And also the protagonists, like there are lots of boys appearing in the story. Boys seem to belong to the untouchable, okay? So hierarchy, class theme is prevalent all over the story. And also sexuality, always a really renowned writer for these sexual images all over the story, okay? Sexuality is the theme as well. And then next story is called A Personal Matter, okay, which was written in 1964. As I said, his first son was born in 1963, right? And he wrote this story in 1964. So one of the biggest themes from the day when the first son was born, Hikari himself was, the first son himself was became the very big theme, right? So A Personal Matter deal with this Hikari, his first son, and also this work is famous as existentialism writing, okay? As I said, he's really influenced by these writers like Sartre. And next story, The Silent Cry, okay, 1967, okay? Okay, so this is a little cosmos, okay, being depicted in this one. It's too complex a story, so it's really impossible for me to explain in 1 minute. But anyway, so many themes are in this story, and for me, this is the best, okay? And for some critics, even this is the best story for among the OS stories, yeah? So first of all, periphery. Okay, because he was born in Ehime Prefecture, not in Tokyo, right? Tokyo is center. Ehime is periphery, right? In the mountain, right? So sometimes literature is called the literature of periphery, okay? And then in his birthplace, there are lots of folklores as well. And then 100 years before of this 1967, in his village, there was some kind of revolution, okay? So he really combined the theme of revolution 100 years before with that 1967, okay? And also US-Japan relationship in 1960, as a historical fact, there was a really big movement, political movement in Tokyo, okay? So that is also one of the biggest themes in this story. And also capitalism. Big supermarkets arrive in the countryside and the small shops are going to be closed, yeah? Anyway, too many themes. And then to prove the fact that this is really important work in the Japanese literature history, Haruki Murakami even paid homage by writing so-called 1973 Pinball, okay? So actually their original titles are very similar, okay? So it's really, we can understand that it's a homage from Murakami to Oe, yeah? All right. So next one, as I said, he's rather famous as a political writer, right? So he wrote so many political essays as well. Okay, so I changed the color because these two, Hiroshima Notes and Okinawa Notes, are essays, okay, not fiction, okay? That's why it's green. All right. So if you really like to know, Hiroshima is really special, right? Because of the atomic bomb. He always thought about Hiroshima. He's still thinking about Hiroshima. And then in 1965, he wrote this very famous essay, Hiroshima Notes. If you really like to know atomic bombs, the situation, and Hiroshima, this is a really great book. And also, most of you, maybe some of you have never heard of this one. Maybe Okinawa. Have you ever heard of that? Okinawa is the southernmost prefecture. And Okinawa is unfortunately the only place where the land battle took place during World War II. Only this place, in this place, American soldiers landed, okay? Lots of people died. It's called the typhoon of steel. So many people died. So to express this velocity, it's called the typhoon of steel. Okay. Anyway, so Okinawa has been one of the biggest themes for his literature as well. So of course, this is about war. Okay. And last one, I chose this one because the Changeling in 2000, okay? So this one is actually metafiction, okay? Although this is fiction, Oe himself appears in this story. So it's like a typical story of metafiction. And also in the Changeling, he deals with the story of the brother-in-law. Do you remember the key player? Juzo Itami. Okay, Juzo Itami unfortunately committed suicide. Okay, that's why he's really dealing with that matter in this Changeling. Okay, 2000. All right, this is extra information for you. I really have to 5 or 6 major works, so of course I shouldn't include these two, but this might be interesting for you, I thought. Okay, so as I explained, Owe is really famous as an extremely leftist writer, right? But actually, he was really praised for depicting the sentiment of far-right persons, okay, for these two works, especially the 17 in 1961, okay? Far-right writer, if you can imagine, Mishima is really the most famous writer as a far-right, extremely right writer, right? Mishima, although he's a little bit older than Oe, he extolled Oe's work, 17, fantastic, Oe-kun. You are a talented writer, he said. And yeah. And then 1961, he wrote this 17. This is based on the actual fact in which the young 17-year-old boy stabbed the leader of the Communist Party, okay, which was really shocking, sensational. But anyway, he dealt with the theme of this one, okay? He really captured the sentiment of the ultra-nationalists, yeah? And then the sexual man, okay, this really is really too much, too intense. It's like a groper, the story of groper. Too much sexuality is going on. But anyway, as Haruki Murakami famously put in the Norwegian word, he is a top. Oe is a top in terms of sexuality and the political violence, yeah? So in terms of this expression. So this really shows the ultranationalism and sexuality was one of his biggest themes, but after his first son was born, it rather changed, okay? I thought it might be interesting for you. All right. From now on, let me introduce writing of each writer, okay? So first of all, as I explained, this is a really beautiful story, The Is Dancer by Yasunari Kawabata, okay, in 1926. Okay, this paragraph I extracted from the last paragraph of the story, okay? So if you wouldn't mind, I'm going to read aloud so that you can read together, okay? So let me read aloud here so that you can be exposed to Kawabata's writing a bit, okay? Okay, let me read. I saw no need to disguise the truth, and I was quite unashamed of my tears. I thought of nothing. It was as if I was slumbering in a sort of quiet fulfillment. I did not know when evening came, but there were lights when we passed Atami. I was hungry and a little chilly. The boy unpacked his dinner, and I ate as if it were mine. Then I covered myself with part of his cape. I floated in a beautiful emptiness. It seemed natural that I should take advantage of his kindness. It seemed completely natural that I should see the old woman to Ueno early in the morning and buy her a ticket to Mito. Everything sank back into an enfolding harmony. The lights went out. The smell of the sea and of the fish in the hold grew stronger. In the darkness, warmed by the boy beside me, I gave myself up to tears. It was as if my head had turned to clear water. It was falling pleasantly away, drop by drop. Soon, nothing would remain. So this is Kawabata. Isn't it beautiful? Yeah. So this is Kawabata. Yeah. If you really are interested, I strongly recommend this story. Okay. So let me point out two things here. Okay. Highlighted in blue and red. Okay. As you can see, the highlighted in blue, like tears, nothingness. Yeah. Emptiness, tears, clear water, nothing, right? But the dichotomy, duality here is what makes this story very unique, very Kawabata-like. Tears, nothingness, and the emptiness the protagonist really feels, but at the same time, this red part, he feels fulfilled, and then harmony, and warmth, and present, okay? This sounds conflicting, right? But anyway, this kind of thing, this dichotomy, duality, but he feels emptiness inside, but at the same time, he feels fulfilled. This is really quintessential Kawabata. If you really like this kind of thing, I totally recommend this story, okay? Okay, so as opposed to this one, okay, I'm going to read a paragraph from the prize stock about the black soldier of Oe, okay? Oe's style, okay? Some people really criticize Oe's writing is terrible because it's really hard to read, okay? Because Oe was influenced a lot by the French literature and English literature, right? So he read lots of translation, right? But at the same time, so some people say his Japanese sound translated Japanese. But for me, that makes his writing really, really extraordinary. Okay. No one can write like Oe, okay, in Japanese. Yeah, which is fantastic. Anyway, maybe only even through the translation of English, maybe you can get a hint of Oe's style. Okay, let me try. By the way, this is dancer is translated by Silence Tecker, very famous translator. Okay. Next one is done by John Nathan, also fantastic translator. So even in the translation, you can enjoy always writing, I think. Okay. This is from a paragraph. Okay. This got the Actaga Prize in 1957. Okay. All right. Let me read aloud. It's about a black soldier. Okay. But all of a sudden, he extended an unbelievably long arm, lifted the wide-mouthed bottle in thick fingers covered with bristly hair, drew it to himself, and smelled it. Then the bottle was tipped. The black soldier's thick, rubbery lips opened. Large, white teeth, neatly aligned like parts inside a machine, were exposed, and I saw milk flowing back into a vast, pink, glistening mouth. The black soldier's throat made a noise like water and air entering a drain. From the corners of his swollen lips, like overripe fruit that had been bound with string, the thick milk spilled, ran down his bare neck, soaked his open shirt and chest, and coagulated like fat on his tough, darkly gleaming skin, trembling there. I discovered my own lips drying with excitement. That goat's milk was a beautiful liquid. It's fantastic. Okay, did you get the sense? So this is, I should say, this is really typical OS style. Even in English, you can get a hint, right? Okay, so what stands out, the sentence which stands out in this paragraph is this part highlighted in yellow for me, yeah? So it's really long sentence, right? And also lots of adjective and participle together, right? For example, for here, this is really noteworthy, I think. Coagulated like fat, tough, darkly gleaming skin, trembling there, okay? So this is OA. And also maybe really evocative image, right? Really strong image coming up from this paragraph, right? So for example, the color, okay? So black soldier, black here, and then pink here, and then of course milk is white, okay? It's really evocative, yeah? So someday maybe if you are learning Japanese, please do read original Japanese so that you can appreciate OM more, okay? Great. All right. Now, let me talk about two Nobel lectures, okay? All right. So Kawabata did his lecture in 1968 and Oe did it in 1994, okay? So Kawabata's title is The Japan, the Beautiful, and Myself. Okay, it's a beautiful title, right? Okay, my pop quiz here, okay? Kenzaburo Oe, okay, did a lecture under the title of Japan, the, and Myself. What kind of adjective can you put? The hint is today's title. Yes, ambiguous. Okay. So maybe some people think that Oe respected Kawabata so much that he took the title from Kawabata, right? But actually, it's not the case. Always lecture itself is kind of a critique towards Kawabata. How audacious, right? Always. But anyway, all right. And then it's a kind of a critique, okay? Let me explain. First of all, what does it mean, the ambiguous Japan for Oe? And what does it mean, the beautiful Japan for Kawabata? Let me first talk about Kawabata's beautiful Japan. Okay. You'd be surprised how much similarity this paragraph has with the paragraph I read in the Is Dancer. Do you remember? Is Dancer was written in 1926. It's one of his first works. But look at this one. Nobel Prize lecture is 1968. Okay, even like 40 years later, but still the same theme. And then this paragraph is extracted from the last paragraph from the lecture. Okay, so I think last paragraph is the epitome of this lecture. Okay, so let me read. Okay, here we have the emptiness, the nothingness of the Orient. My own works have been described as works of emptiness, but it is not to be taken for the nihilism of the West. The spiritual foundation would seem to be quite different. Dogen entitled his poem about the season, Innate Reality, and even as he sang of the beauty of the seasons, he was deeply immersed in Zen. This is the last paragraph of the lecture. Okay, so let me summarize his lecture, okay, and also this paragraph, my interpretation. But anyway, this is basically what Kawabata said in the last paragraph and before the last paragraph, okay. First of all, emptiness. As you can see in the Is Dancer as well, emptiness and nothingness right here, okay. And also Zen Buddhism, okay. Zen Buddhism is everywhere in Kawabata's lecture, okay? And also, number 3, although this is not written, but before this paragraph, he was talking about lots of writers committing suicide, okay? And then he is saying that committing suicide doesn't equal nihilism in the West, okay? Because the foundation is different, as you can see from here, right? So West and East is different, okay? So suicide, emptiness, nothingness is not nihilism in the West, okay? So to summarize his point, basically what he's saying is Japan is unique, unintelligible, and yet beautiful. Japan is really hard to understand, very unique. We have something only we have. That's why it's even more beautiful. I think that's really what he was trying to say, okay? But I'm really simplifying things. So please do read the lecture. After this session, I am going to send you an email with the links of Oe, both Oe and Kawabata. You can read them in details, okay? But anyway, Japan is unique, but beautiful. Okay, that is Kawabata, okay? Then Oe made a critique, okay? So this is a paragraph from Oe's lecture. Please look at this one, okay? I read here, Kawabata Yasunari, the first Japanese writer who stood on this platform as a winner of the Nobel Prize for Literature, delivered a lecture entitled Japan, the Beautiful and Myself. It was at once very beautiful and vague. This is a keyword, okay? Although Kawabata himself didn't use the word vague at all, this is always interpretation, okay? So Kawabata's lecture was beautiful and yet very vague, okay? So this yellow part is the summary of Oe, okay? So he is saying that the title itself, in Japanese, 美しい日本の私. That is the Kawabata's lecture. 美しい日本の No is a particle, okay? And then this title, 美しい日本の私, can be interpreted in many ways. Actually, 2 or 3 ways. And then one is like this one, Japan, the Beautiful and Myself. This is done by Silence Teka. And then another one is like a myself from the beautiful Japan. Anyway, my point is the title itself, because of this no, okay, as I said, he's really precise in the definition of words, right? Anyway, the title is really vague, he says. And also number 2, Kawabata recited Zen poems in Japanese, okay? Zen poems for us, for even Japanese, it's unintelligible. It's too difficult, okay? So even in Japanese, it's very difficult, but he recited these poems in front of the audience in Stockholm in Japanese. How audacious he is, right? And then he didn't try to communicate this poem to the audience at all, right? Because it's too difficult, even in Japanese, right? And then he recited this one in Japanese. And then that's why Oe says, Kawabata was rather closed, okay? Right. Let me share another paragraph from Owe's lecture here, okay? It's rather small, okay? But anyway, you can read, right? According to such poems, words are confined within their closed shells. The readers cannot expect that words will ever come out of these poems and get through to us. One can never understand or feel sympathetic towards these Zen poems except by giving oneself up. Don't you think it's really rather familiar? So for Oe, it's like Zen poems is like closed shells, okay? It's really hard to understand, okay? But one can never understand it or feel sympathetic except by giving oneself up. This phrase sounds familiar to you maybe. In the Is Dancer, there's a phrase, I gave up myself to tears, right? So only by giving up oneself, you can really understand or you can feel sympathetic. Okay, so always critique is Kawabata says Japan is really beautiful, very unique. But is Japan that unique, unintelligible, and beautiful? Is Japan that special country? Oe doesn't think so. For Oe, Japan is ambiguous. That's why his title is Japan the Ambiguous and myself. Okay. All right, let me be an English teacher for 1 minute, okay? And then ambiguous, okay? So it's like a synonym of vague, but ambi is really, this prefix means two things, right? Like ambidextrous, you can use two hands, for example, okay? So for Oe, Japan is ambiguous, okay? Let me explain, okay? Very simply. He says, for example, Japan is, look at the left side, okay? Japan is a nuclear victim because we suffered a lot from the atomic bombs in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, right? And also Japan was the first country of being modernized, okay? We entered the West first in Asian country, okay? So modernization equals West. And also in the 1970s, as a bogus, Japan's number one. We really thrived economically, right? In the 1960s, 70s. Economically, we are really great, but ambiguous. Two sides, okay? Of course, as for the first point, of course, we were the nuclear victim, but at the same time, we tried to invade Asia, right? And the second point, of course, we were the first country to be modernized. At the same time, we tried to protect traditional culture, which is Asia, right? And also the flip side of the economic prosperity, of course, we didn't care about the environmental conservation at all, okay? So damaging environmental conservation. Okay, so for Oe, Japan is not unique but ambiguous. Japan has both beautiful sides, of course, but at the same time, some kind of flaws we have. Okay, so Oe's literature is really to depict or express human beings themselves. Okay, human beings, there are some beautiful aspects in us, but at the same time, we are flawed, right? So, but Oe tries to try to show the human beings as they are. Okay, so this is rather different. And then let me finally come back to the last slide from me. And then, as I said, look at these different attires, okay? So for me, I interpret this way. Oe is wearing Western costume and Kawabata is wearing traditional costume. So for Kawabata, Japan is really unique. Kimono, oh, it's really beautiful. Kimono, very unique clothes, right? So, but Oe was wearing normal clothes. In those days, we of course used to wear, still now, because we are wearing Western clothes like this one, right? And then Oe really wants to make his literature universal. Not unique, not confined to its own culture, but rather universal, okay? And then Oe always says, Kawabata, before Oe, Kawabata, Tanizaki, and Mishima, these writers really famous internationally, right? But they were really emphasizing on the Japan's uniqueness, okay? Unique part. But Oe's hero is Abe Kobo. contemporary writer. Abe Kobo, regardless of nationality, he was dealing with the universal themes. Okay, so maybe I'm conveying my message rather clearly. Is it okay? Yeah. Anyway, Kawabata is really great writer, but uniqueness. And then Owe is trying to be like universal. Okay, that's why their titles are rather different, beautiful and ambiguous. All right. So I'm going to spend, I think you pose some question in the chat function, maybe. Yeah. So from now on, I'm going to field some question for 10 minutes. Yeah. So let me, okay. You can use chat function. Have you asked any questions? Yeah, let me see. So far, only one, maybe. Okay, sure. All right. So let me share with you. First question. Could you please write title and author of the two books mentioned at the beginning? Thank you. Okay. All right. So our admin staff already did. Number two, Kawabata became orphaned. He was 4 and then went to enroll into prestigious institution. I'm curious to know. What sparked his interest in literature? Was he lonely when he grew up and read lots of books, or was he naturally gifted to write? That's interesting because I think lots of, for example, his literary hero was Tanizaki Junichiro among Japanese writers, right? And also among the foreign writers, he respected Tagore, okay? So Tagore as a foreign writer and also Tanizaki as a Japanese writer, okay? So that maybe answers your question. So he really read a lot of books when he grew up, all right? And also at the same time, he was naturally gifted as well, right? Because it is said he had some kind of intuition, okay, intuitive power. That means he really is said to be able to predict the weather the next day or something. Okay, it's rather okay difficult to understand, but anyway, he was a really prodigy, yeah, from the start. Yeah. Does that answer your question? Yeah. Okay, next question. Okay, had he participated in the wars? Given the fact that he can write and wars, I think, involve a lot of propaganda. Okay, that's a good point, actually. He didn't go to war. One, because when the war broke out, he was almost like in the late 30s and 40s even, right? So he was rather really old. And also his body, and he was not that strong, right? As a, he didn't have a strong body, right? That's why he didn't go to war. Yeah. Does that answer the question? Okay. All right. Now, number 3, I'm not majoring in literature. You mentioned French literature was very famous at that time. What's the relationship between Japanese, French literature? Is there any resemblance or in terms of politics, human rights? Okay. All right. That's a very good question. But in the 1960s, especially, French literature, of course, Russian literature and French literature, especially, lots of aspiring writers really arbitrarily read these literature, okay, French and Russian, especially as I said, existentialist writers, because Sartre was politically really active, right? So for him, engagement, commitment, right? You really have to politically commit yourself. Okay, that's why, especially the Murakami generation. Murakami was born in 1949. He really, right? Their generation really devoted themselves to political movement. In that sense, French literature had a huge impact on those specific age as well. But of course, French literature, I used to live in Paris, so many great literature, right? Who cannot be influenced by French literature? Does that answer the question, more or less? Okay, all right. And then next question is, how is Kawabata seen in Japan today? Outdated and too traditional? That's a good question, okay? But it's really interesting, right? We never read the stories in the high school textbooks, for example, Kawabata, yeah? Sometimes it's too erotic, for example, right? It's not appropriate for youngsters, yeah? But anyway, it's not outdated at all. Okay, but whenever I read his stories, I feel some kind of calmness in his writing, which is fantastic, right? This is might be too personal feeling, but maybe some of my friends could share my view as well with Kawabata's writing. And too traditional, maybe it is so. It is traditional, but through Kawabata, you can really see the beautiful old capital, Kyoto, for example, and then tea ceremony and Zen Buddhism. I try to educate myself in terms of Zen. It's too much, and the more I learn about Zen, the more lost I get. But anyway, that's life, right? Okay. Number 5, see. They are so different, but which one is more popular in Japan? Kenzaburo, Oe, Yasunari, Kawabata? Oe, definitely. No, I'm just joking. Okay. Oe, Kenzaburo, I'm a huge fan, right? So I'm totally biased. But anyway, which one is more popular? I should say Kawabata, definitely. Yeah, because Kawabata's writing is more, it's much easier to access, right? And then also like emptiness and then nothingness and then some kind of zen. Sounds really beautiful, right? And then I really admire Kawabata, but Oe Kenzaburo, unfortunately, among my generation, not so many people read Oe. That's a really unfortunate thing. But for me, Oe, maybe. Does that answer the question? Okay. Who is your favorite author? That's a good question. I have many favorite authors, but first of all, Oe. Yeah, too much of Oe today. And then Haruki Murakami, I like. There's the other Murakami called Ryu Murakami. Yeah. And then Enchimiko is really great female author. I really love. And then, of course, Tanizaki is fantastic. Yeah. And Akutaga, genius. So many writers. Yeah, so far. George Orwell, by the way, among the foreign writers for me. All right. Which book of OA is good to start? Okay. Price Stock, definitely. Okay. So Price Stock is not that long. Okay. And then it's in this book as well. So I just, I'm advertising too much on this book. But anyway, I would recommend Price Stock. Okay. Only 40 pages. Yeah. All right, next one. Kawabata, which Kawabata book would be the best to start with? That's a good question. For me, it's the answer. It's already in the book. Or maybe the Sound of Mountain is also beautiful, but Snow Country, I should say. Snow Country is really the most representative work, okay? The translation is easy to get, okay? All right. All right, I think I covered what kind of literature are Kawabata and Owe exposed to or consumed. What kind of literature are, you mean what kind of literature did they read when they were young, maybe, right? Owe read all of the literature in the world, okay? Especially French, Russian. Okay, I'm going to give you another interesting anecdote, okay? Whenever Owe reads Dostoevsky, okay? Dostoevsky, for example, Karamazov, right? He tries to read it, okay, in English and Japanese, okay? What is really fascinating about his way of reading is he oscillates. He uses the word oscillation, okay? He uses among three languages, okay? So Japanese, sorry, two languages, Japanese and English and, sorry, French, right? French, Japanese, English. If he oscillates among these three, he can appreciate the work more and the understanding of the story is going to deepen, okay, because of that, okay? So for him, of course, Russian literature and then French literature, and also his favorite literature is English literature, right? In the Nobel Prize, he mentions George Orwell as well and W.B. Yeats as well, the Irish writer. So there are lots of English authors influence as well. Yeah. All right. So another one is the impression, all right? So I have only read Nip the Bats, Shoot the Kids by Kenzaburo. It's fantastic. It's a collection of short stories. It's a very famous one, okay? I hadn't thought of his universal aim. I will definitely try to read more of his work, definitely, okay? So, all right, great. Please do read more of his work. If you haven't read Oe or if you haven't read Kawabata, I strongly recommend one story I recommended today would be a good start. Thank you so much for joining today. I hope I'm going to see you sometime soon. I might hold this kind of similar event in the future. Do join us. Thank you so much.